Yes.
What's going on?
This is the celebration of the 250th anniversary of Colonel Henry Knox's noble train that started in Fort Ticonderoga and eventually made its way to Boston to help turn the tide of the war.
Who are you?
I am David LaPointe. I'm a military interpreter up at Fort Ticonderoga, but today I'm representing the 25-year-old Boston bookseller, Henry Knox, who had been tasked by George Washington to retrieve cannon from the Champlain Valley, as well as before that, New York City, and haul it back to the camp at Cambridge so that the artillery could be delivered to the skirts of Boston to free the city from British control.
He was an important guy.
He was a very important gentleman, yes. He was a self-made American man. He never attended a college or higher education school and actually educated himself entirely through military treatises and military documents and learned everything on his own about being a military engineer of sorts, and even pushed for his own appointing of becoming Colonel of the Continental Artillery. Yet, funnily enough, he did not know that he was Colonel of the Continental Artillery when Washington ordered him to retrieve the artillery from New York, but en route already was.
I'm Bill Benner. I'm the county historian and the town historian. I want to thank you for coming out today for part of the Knox reenactment. We kind of call this week Knox Mania. We've had a lot of Colonel Knox events. 250 years ago this week, Colonel Knox was coming through Kinderhook. We are very grateful for a number of people here, but right now I'm going to introduce, you'll hear the speeches inside the tent where it's a little warmer. But right now, this is Cameron and David from Fort Ticonderoga. They've come down here. They're wonderful people. This is Owen and Chris, who are handling our oxen. So, Timmy Ohms is the supervisor of the town of Kinderhook. He is responsible for this, along with Matt Morrell, the chairman of the board of supervisors, who is in the tent. And Phil Bickerton is the deputy supervisor. And of course, an integral part of everything that happens in Columbia County is Holly Tanner, who is the county clerk. And this is my boy, Henry. All right. So, Cameron, after you.
All right, thank you, Bill. Let's give a round of applause for Bill. Good morning, good people of Kinderhook and Columbia County and the surroundings. Who's come from really far away? Yeah, where have you come from? Syracuse. Awesome. So we got some Western New York here. It's a wonderful show out. I want to first thank you all here in Kinderhook for having us come down from Fort Ticonderoga to be part of your story of Henry Knox. So, the noble train of artillery that came through here 250 years ago to the day, well, where did this start? Well, where did it start before that? Why are we doing this? So, April 19th, 1775, you of course have the shots heard around the world at the battles of Lexington and Concord when British regulars came out of the city of Boston to seize ammunition and supplies, of course stopped by militia at Lexington and then beaten back on the road to Boston by more minute companies from the surrounding area. Now what happened after April 19th is more militia, even as riders were sent down to Connecticut, even Western New York into here, companies of militia started to march and spill in around the city of Boston, around those heights. Now, of course, to drive this British out of the city of Boston and liberate that city, you need to control Boston Harbor. And to do that, what do you need?
Cannons.
Well, you could use a navy. But you at least need artillery. Now, there were some artillery pieces in Boston, but you needed some really big artillery to command that harbor and the city. And it actually wasn't Henry Knox, right, with the idea to capture Fort Ticonderoga for its artillery. The ideas go well before April 19th. Matter of fact, Benedict Arnold, when in his private life, he took many trips to Canada and knew about the artillery at Fort Ticonderoga. And as early as March of 1775, before the battles of Lexington and Concord, a lawyer from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, John Brown, he went on a little intelligence gathering journey into Canada. And on his way back through Canada, back to Pittsfield, he stopped at Ticonderoga and saw all of the cannon there and the weak fortifications and the few soldiers that occupied that fort. And he also knew that the people best poised to capture Fort Ticonderoga were the Green Mountain Boys settled in the Hampshire Grants across the lake in what we now call Vermont. So, you have militia spilling in around the city of Boston. As part of that, Benedict Arnold starts marching his company, the governor's foot guard, second company from New Haven, Connecticut, starts marching that company to Boston. On the road to Boston, he meets another guy in Great Barrington, just down the road. And he meets Holden Parsons there, and they talk about getting the guns from Fort Ticonderoga for the army outside of Boston. Parsons goes back to Connecticut. Arnold goes to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And Parsons in Connecticut starts to spread this idea. And a committee is formed in Connecticut, because that's what you do in New England. You form committees when you want to get nothing done. And this committee is commanded by Samuel Mott to capture Fort Ticonderoga and Crown Point for the artillery. That committee travels with a few Connecticut men all the way up to Pittsfield, Massachusetts. There at Easton's Tavern, they meet with John Brown, Colonel Easton, and grab a few Berkshire County militiamen and start making their way to Castleton, Vermont. Now, while this gathering committee that came out of Connecticut is on the march, Arnold is back outside of Boston meeting with the Committee of Safety there of the Provincial Congress of Massachusetts Bay, and he gets orders and a colonelship. So he gets a little promotion to capture Fort Ticonderoga and bring the guns down to Massachusetts at the same time. He starts making his way across Massachusetts and then realizes that he's about to miss the fight. So he rides hard all the way to Castleton, meeting the Green Mountain Boys there, actually interrupting a council of war that they had in a barn in Castleton, Vermont, and tried to take command of this expedition. Of course, the Green Mountain Boys would only follow their elected leaders. Of course, that elected leader being Ethan Allen. Now, Ethan Allen had rode ahead to gather more of the Green Mountain Boys. Arnold rides hard after him. The committee and the Green Mountain Boys chase him down. They get just outside of Shoreham, Vermont, what was then in the Hampshire Grants. And there Arnold and Allen meet, and they decide to take a joint command for the capture of Fort Ticonderoga. Arnold, having that commission, has actual legal authority rather than this secret committee from Connecticut. So if things went bad, Ethan Allen wouldn't be responsible. So they, through the night of May 9th into the morning of May 10th, they cross their Green Mountain Boys, capture the fort without firing a single shot. It's the first offensive victory of our American Revolution. And the next step was to bring the cannon down to Boston, right? On May 10th, they're going to do this. No, what actually happened was immediately when they captured Fort Ticonderoga, they realized the position was vulnerable, and they had opened up a second front to the war. So Arnold, taking a recently captured vessel on Lake Champlain, the Catherine, a ship of Philip Skeens, renaming it the Liberty, sails it down Lake Champlain to St. John, captures the British sloop there, the Betsy, renames it the Enterprise. He's a real big Star Trek fan. And the Enterprise and the Liberty make up the beginning of his fleet that he builds on later the next year. But, of course, with the war now stretching into Canada, Continental Congress finds out about this and they said, what are you guys doing? So there's a little bit of a problem. A lot of the cannon from Ticonderoga starts to get moved down to the southern end of Fort George, or Lake George at Fort George. And then the Continental Congress said, you know, maybe that Canada thing was a good idea, and we should invade Canada. So thousands of troops through the fall of 1775 make their way through Ticonderoga, capturing St. John, Chambly, Montreal, and going all the way to Quebec. At the same time, Boston still needs its cannon, right? Now, cannon. Let's take a look at some cannon real quick. David and I are going to grab this cannon here so you guys can see it. We're really strong. All right. We're going to flip it over here. Now, cannon is what the city of Boston needs, right? Now, cannon come in various sizes, and they're all rated by the weight of the shot that they fire. But regardless of the size of the cannon, they all have the same parts. So just bear with me here for a second. At the cannon itself is the tube, right? So this would sit on a carriage. You can see some of those tubes on carriages behind us later on. Now, this cannon, its tube, has a bore from the muzzle, a hole drilled all the way through its center, back to the breech where the cannon's cast its thickest. Now, why would it be cast the thickest at the breech? That's where the gunpowder explodes, right? Now, if you look very closely, at the top of the breech, there is a small hole drilled in from the outside into the inside of the bore. That is where you pour your priming charge or put a priming quill into to fire off the gunpowder inside. That's the touch hole. A couple other really key points on a cannon. You have at the back this knob here called the cascable. This is really nice on a carriage because you can have a screw elevation where you can raise and lower the cannon to aim it. But it's also used to lash rope around to lift the cannon up and off of its carriages, maybe onto sleds, maybe onto other vehicles, or just to tie a cannon down. And at the center, just ahead of the center of gravity, are these two turned cylinders called the trunnions, which allow that pivot point, and also what connects your cannon down onto its carriage. Now, these parts seem pretty simple, but they're really important. But what really makes these cannon so useful is not the cannon in themselves, it's what they shoot. So Henry Knox here, he's going to pass out some ammunition for you guys to handle here. Now, this is a 3-pounder cannon, which means it fires how heavy of a shot? 3 pounds. But the cannon doesn't weigh 3 pounds. Now, also being passed around are 6-pounders. The larger one is a 12-pound ball. Now, Henry Knox grabbed 8.
Are you kind of cold?
Yeah.
Standing on your knees?
I'm used to it. Yeah. Now it goes. Henry Knox was really fortunate. He was able to get some pretty large guns. He's quite fond of some 18-pounders that he was able to grab. Now, for a shot, you need the gunpowder to fire it, right? So the Americans, they're using what the British used at the time, 1/3 the weight of the shot. So if we have a 3-pounder, how many pounds of gunpowder do you need for that one shot? 1 pound. So you can see here this 3-pound cartridge here. Typically they pre-measure this out and put it in a flannel or paper cartridge. Now still to fire that loose shot, you need 2 more things. what are called wads. One wad would sit on top of the cartridge, then your cannonball, then another wad on top of that. For making those, we're going to use junk, literally rope no longer serviceable. You just cut that up, coil it up in those discs, and quilt them together. And these 4 things, you can fire that cannonball out the gun. It's a lot to load, but you know, when you have lots of cannon over a siege, you can do this. Now, of course, there's lots of other shot, not just that solid one shot. You could then take that and make many shot come out at the same time. So going down from there, you have what's called grape shot. All right, so grape shot for a 3-pounder, grape shot for a 4-pounder, and grape shot for a 6-pounder. So that 4-pounder, to give you an idea, rather than 4 pounds of solid round ball, you have 4 pounds of 9 smaller 1 1/4 inch iron balls, all on that base around a post in the canvas bag, quilted together. Now still, you could break this down even further and switch to what's called case or canister shot. In this tin case, you have 4 pounds, 3 pounds, or 12 pounds of soldiers' musket balls. When you fire this, that tin case explodes off of its wooden wad. Wooden wad explodes as well, and all of those musket balls come out like a big shotgun. So you really see these cannons are important, a lot more destructive than a simple small arm or musket or firelock. So we got to get these cannons from Ticonderoga, and that is when, in the heart of the attack in Canada,
Henry Knox was ordered. In the middle of November, all the while the American Army under Schuyler and Montgomery were invading Canada, the Continental Congress appointed Henry Knox to be colonel of the Continental Artillery. That happened at the exact same time that General George Washington ordered Knox to first go to New York City and then up to the Champlain Valley and Fort Ticonderoga to bring cannon to Boston. Knox arrived after traveling all the way up on horseback to the southern end of Lake George by December 4th, and then made his way down Lake George, and by the evening of December 5th, arrived to Fort Ticonderoga, where there at Ticonderoga, Knox selected his favorite 59 cannon and mortar and howitzers, over a 60-ton haul of ordnance, that he, along with the help of the soldiers from Fort Ticonderoga, packed onto a gondola that took the artillery around Fort Ticonderoga up the Lachute River, or from the bridge that crossed the Lachute River, over the portage road to Lake George by carts and wagons and draft animals. There at the northern end of Lake George, they were loaded onto 3 large ships, and by December 10th, arrived to the southern end of Lake George, the first shipment of that artillery. And thereafter, that artillery awaited for draft animals and teamsters to continue the journey.
thank you, Henry Knox.
Thank you. Never disappointed.
So, there at the southern end of Lake George, a New York militia captain, Captain Palmer, went out to find local teamsters, guys they could contract with to bring their own sleds and pick up all of these cannon tubes at the southern end of Lake George. So the teamsters arrive, and there at the southern end of Lake George, they start loading these cannon. So I'm going to need 4 very strong volunteers. You look strong. Come on up here. You look strong. Henry, you want to volunteer? All right. Perfect. All right. We're going to lift this cannon up, and we're going to put it down onto this sled. So the first thing we're going to do, you remember those parts of the cannon? The cascable. Nice spot for lashing rope around. So, all right, we're going to go like this. Go around one more time. All right, one here, one here. I still need another volunteer. Anybody? It's not even the weekend yet. Come on up here. All right. We'll go one around the muzzle here. Now, there at the southern end of Lake George, with manpower, but also machines like levers and pulleys and artillery engines, they got all the cannon off of their boats, some weighing almost 3 tons each.
Are you struggling?
The frozen weather struck my room. We're almost there. There we go. All right. All right. Now, one there, one here. Now we're going to start. There we go. We're going to walk this, watching your toes. All right, we're going to go this way. And we're going to get this right onto this ledge here. Good job. All right, we're going to move it back. Here, I'll take over. All right. Now, a little bit more right there. All right, I'll take these off. Now, you remember the hole that's at the top of the breech for the priming charge? Now, a lot of these cannon weren't bronze. A lot of these cannon were iron. Now, what happens to iron if snow and sleet and rain is going to get on it?
Rusty.
Right. It's going to rust. It's going to corrode. Now, on the outside of the cannon, not a big deal, right? You can polish it back up. On the inside of the cannon, big deal. Too much corrosion could cause these guns to actually misfire or not work at all. So, Henry Knox had a solution for this. Now, he didn't have anything to cover them with, but he had a better idea that's really simple. How do you think he ordered these cannon loaded onto the sled? The touch hole down, right? Really simple. Just put the gun upside down. Now, we gotta, of course, lash this gun down. So we're gonna, Henry, why don't you grab that rope right there behind you? The smaller one. Yeah, grab that. So we're gonna quickly lash this down, of course, using those pieces like the cascable at the back, which is literally designed for this reason. He's an ambitious soldier.
Chop the firewood for you.
And then we're going to go across. You can imagine with cold fingers, middle of December, doing this at Lake George. All right. Around here. Here. And you think that'll last till Boston? We'll find out. All right. So we got our cannon loaded on. I don't think it's going anywhere. We'll find out. Now, there at the southern end of Lake George, Captain Palmer brought teams, actually the initial journey, with mostly horses, some oxen. So let's introduce our oxen here. So Owen, why don't you bring your oxen up here a little bit? So this is Zeus and Ares. Let's give a round of applause for Zeus and Ares. Now, does anyone want to take a guess what oxen actually are? They're steers. That's right. Somebody got it over here. They're not cows, but they are cattle. Oxen is actually just a job title. It means they've been trained to work. Now, we don't use cows because cows are too important because they're female, right? So they are making more baby cattle, and they're used for making milk, cheese, and butter. But the male cattle, bull calves, you turn those into steers, and you use them for mainly one thing, right? Anyone hungry? So the lucky few get to live out their life and get trained to become oxen. Now, oxen are great because they're free. Everyone's got cattle in the time period, and if you don't, your neighbor does. Horses cost a lot of money. And any farmer can make their harness, which is called a yoke. Now, a yoke is actually not all that heavy. These guys weigh what, 2,000 apiece?
Closer to 1,200. Almost 1,000 pounds.
They're only 1,300 pounds? Well conditioned. Yeah? All right, so about 3,000 together, these guys. That weighs what, about 35, 40 pounds? Yeah. So your pocketbook is about as heavy as that yoke is. Now, any farmer can make this. It's virtually free. And they use their necks and really heavy loads. They'll use the bows, the little hoops under their necks, using their shoulders to pull that load. Your load connects to a ring here. And oxen are really easy to train. Matter of fact, it's usually up to young boys to train the new teams. And still to this very day, the ox driving community, young boys like Owen, when'd you start?
When I was 9.
9 years old, started training his first team. So, to walk these oxen, Owen is going to show you. When they're very young, you put them in a yoke as fast as possible once you get them used to walking on a halter. And then you start teaching them how to walk forward, back, left, and right together. So, Owen, bring them forward a couple steps. All right? So there's no bit in their mouths. It is literally just done by verbal command, body position, and your goad position. That stick, that's just the steering wheel. So you saw he stepped forward and told them to step up, and whoa was stop. Now if you wanted to back them up, you just bother their feet, stay back, and you back up with them. Now turning them to the right, you use a command called G. Everyone say G. G. All right, so what Owen's going to do is slow his off ox down and speed his nigh ox, the one nearest to him, up by stepping just ahead and saying G. And they'll turn right around 360 degrees for him. All right, now to turn him to the left. Anyone know the command? Oh, that's right. So haw, he's going to slow his nigh ox down and speed his off ox up and say haw. And start kind of stepping back right to where he wants them to step in. Now once you've trained your young cattle to do this, that's the easy part. Then you got to start introducing weight. What's the heaviest these guys have pulled?
They pulled 8,000 on wheels and 2,000 on a sled.
Wheels make things easier. It's a great invention. But on a sled like this, 2,000?
Somewhere between 2 and 3.
All right. So this is what we would call a yoke of oxen. Now, Henry Knox didn't just want yoke of oxen. He wanted teams. Teams are 2 yoke of oxen. So 2,000. We're up to 4,000 pounds of pulling power with a team. How much does a cannon weigh? Anywhere from 500 pounds to almost 2 to 3 tons. So you just add teams for the heavier cannon, right? Now, these guys are great for plowing, hauling wagons, vehicles, whatever, harrows, but of course great for pulling sleds. So Owen's gonna come over to our sled and he's gonna hook up to this sled.
G. 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 G.
Now Henry Knox, after traveling with these teams and their sleds that they brought with them, he actually complained quite a bit. Because some of these guys brought really bad sleds. And they started to fall apart. And every time a sled fell apart, that company had to stop and repair the sled. So later on, General Philip Schuyler, for all the other sleds, he requests certain criteria that they had to meet. So he's going to hook on up. And actually, if we can get a nice space through here, Owen's going to do a nice haw turn for me and turn these guys around with our cannon. And we'll see if my lashing job's good enough. So, the sleds are all at the southern end of Lake George, right? Cannons are loaded. Now, why would you want to use sleds in December? It's pretty obvious, right? The snow. The ground's frozen. If you used wagons, you'd be rutting up the roads, you would get stuck. Very simple. Sleds are going to be the best way to do it. And does he have snow? He has no snow. He actually has to wait for a snowstorm. Then he has to wait for the roads to pack back down. And on the 17th, he leaves Fort George, coming all the way down through Fort Edward, all the way down, crossing the Mohawk River, getting to Albany. Now he's got to cross the Albany River. So, start heading to Boston, Owen.
Paw, boys, come here. Paw.
Now there's one problem. Remember, some of these cannon weigh 2,000 plus pounds. Now add the weight of the oxen, 3,000, 4,000 pounds. So you got maybe 6,000 pounds. Now what do you got to cross at Albany? Ice on the Hudson. Is the ice on the Hudson this time of the year thick? Sometimes it's non-existent, especially today. But they really worried about this. So what's a way that you could maybe cut the weight in half and not risk losing the cannon permanently and losing the important draft teams? Any ideas? So you get to the Hudson, you want to cross the Hudson, but you don't want to put all the weight on the ice at the same time. One at a time, not just one at a time, but a longer rig. So, Henry Knox ordered the cannon to be left on one side of the river. Then on the other side, he had all the teams dragged to the other side. And there, go ahead and unhook. Yeah, go ahead and hook this. With long rope, you might get to Boston with this rope. All right, go ahead and stretch that rope out for me. The rope's kind of long, so you got to go long towards the artillery. All right, so as he's going to the other bank of the river, say we start dragging this cannon across the ice, and the ice starts to break. Now the cannon's going to the bottom of the Hudson, and the team could go too. So any ideas what you might want to do? Cut the rope. And while crossing the Hudson, one of the young teamsters, John Becker, in his memoirs in the early 19th century, he recorded the method of how they did this. Just like this, with long rope. Now, with a hatchet, he had his father stand behind the team and cut the rope. It helps when it's taut. There we go. Now, on the other end from where they were ready to cut, there was a buoy on the end of the rope. So the cannon went down to the bottom on the sled, and there, on the water, was the rope with the buoy. And at Albany, they lost a gun through the ice and called the great citizens in Albany all out to hold on to that rope and pull by hand that cannon out of the Hudson River. And they recovered it and drug it all the way to Boston. So the good citizens of Albany helped too. Now, of course, this noble train of artillery gets all the way to Springfield, Massachusetts with that round of teams with John Becker, and there they have a great celebration. And before they cross the Connecticut River, they actually dumped their cannon on the side of the road and went back to Albany. John Becker actually recorded in his memoirs that it was such a shame to see these glorious pieces for liberty dumped in the mud. But their teams from Massachusetts picked those tubes back up, drug them all the way to the Army outside of Boston, where carriages were made for them. And on the 16th of March, the British woke up with cannon on Dorchester and Roxbury Heights and realized they had a problem. Now the wind wasn't in their favor, so they had to wait a day. And on the 17th, the British evacuated Boston. The people in Boston think they're celebrating St. Patrick's Day, but it's evacuation day. And it was the guns from Ticonderoga and the help from local communities along that route, like the members of Kinderhook and the surrounding area here, that saw this noble train to fruition and saw the great people in Boston liberated. Now with that said, that concludes our talk. I want to thank you all for being here today, here in Kinderhook. I'm all set. All right, thank you. If anyone has any questions, feel free to come and ask.
I know it's a little windy and it's a little cold, and I want to thank the folks from Fort Ticonderoga. Aren't they wonderful? Yeah. They're going to be in Hillsdale tomorrow. Supervisor Dvorak's here from the town of Hillsdale. There he is over there, and he is going to be hosting an event tomorrow similar to this as we hand off to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They're coming with some additional items to display as well tomorrow. They're going to be in Hillsdale for a longer period of time. Before we do some speeches, we also are blessed to have with us today 2 artillery regiment pieces, one from the 1st Tryon and one from the Schuyler Artillery, both in Albany. They are over there. They are waiting to show you and give you a brief demonstration on American Revolutionary War artillery pieces. And then, if you cover your ears, they'll fire a few times. So, these guys Cameron and his crew are going to be here. They're happy to answer questions, but the folks around the cannons are happy to make a presentation now. So make your way over. Right over. This is John Lisinski, who's in charge.
Lance, if you need me, if you need backup, let me know.
Just a few more. Good to know.
Yeah. I can hold a tripod. We're here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Tim Ohms, the supervisor for the town of Kinderhook and a member of the Board of Supervisors. It's indeed an incredible pleasure to have you all here today, and welcome to the first full event of the year that marks the 250th anniversary of the birth of the United States of America. We have a number of interesting things for us to show you today, as well as the benefit of Chris Gibson, who is a local Kinderhook resident, will be offering some remarks. To be honest with you, I thought that's all I had to do is introduce Chris Gibson, but now I have this. But we're going to get through this. First, I'd like to tell you that I'm very appreciative of the joint collaborative effort you see here today. The efforts that you are experiencing today are the result of the dedication and work of a number of people representing the County of Columbia, the Village of Kinderhook, the Town of Kinderhook, the Kinderhook Memorial Library, Fort Ticonderoga, and the Schuler Artillery Regiment from Albany County. And more importantly, we are grateful to the Columbia County Historical Society. Hold on. Need a paper cutter. And all the great people that got together to make this event an incredible experience for all of us. I hope you will be able to partake in the special Knox cake that we have, as well as enjoying the ice cream from Stewart's that has been generously donated with their special flavor entitled Knox Cannonball Crunch, in recognition of Colonel Knox. Does anybody know how old Colonel Knox was when he did this endeavor? 25. Wow. If he was 50, he would have told you you're nuts and go home.
That's right.
250 years ago this week, Colonel Knox came through Kinderhook. His men traveled over 300 miles transporting 60 tons of cannon from Fort Ticonderoga in the North Country down through the Hudson Valley and across through the Berkshires. Today we are honoring this effort, which resulted in tremendous strategic and military success and in driving the British out of Boston. Along the way in this reenacted history, we have a linstock which bears a ribbon from each county through which it has traveled across upstate New York. I was privileged to be part of this last group last Saturday as we received this linstock from Rensselaer County, and tomorrow representatives from Columbia County. And here is the linstock being displayed by
Taryn Zerlo, curator of the Columbia County Historical Society.
Tomorrow we will hand this linstock off to our neighbors in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as they proceed along the route to Boston. The sacrifices of Colonel Knox and his men changed the outcome of the American Revolution. The success of Colonel Knox and his men resulted in the French coming to the aid of the Americans. We cannot overstate what Colonel Knox did for us that made our War of Independence a success. I want to especially thank Amy Strunk, who went through hell and back to make this possible. The countless hours and the nerve-wracking dedication, we can't say thank you enough. Also, Holly Tanner and Mayor Weir of the Village of Kinderhook. I'm also grateful to the county historian and town historian, Bill Better. And I truly want to thank each and every one of you to know that this was a group effort and it's been great.
It's Kristen.
Next on the docket is the famous Chris Gibson. I don't really think I need to say a lot to introduce him. I think his name says it all, right?
Gotta go through the stick now.
You're going to stick about events?
Well, yeah, thank you, Tim, and good morning, everyone. In some respects, it's kind of a surreal experience. I don't think I'm alone in having this experience. You know, it was 50 years ago to this week. You know, I was here. I'm seeing some people shake their heads. I was here for the 200th anniversary, and let me tell you, we may be slightly uncomfortable right now. It was about 10 degrees then. So I was 11 years old, and all of us were pretty darn cold. But, you know, it really strikes me that as humans, we experience in time in very mysterious and mystical ways. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like 10 million years ago. But nevertheless, you know, what I want to do is share with you, thinking about this experience of time, you know, try to imagine what it was like to be here. Right here in this village 250 years ago, because actually I think there are some important lessons we can take away from that experience today. Because 250 years ago, we had about 300 souls that lived here in our village. The village had gone through tremendous change over the previous 40 to 50 years. You know, in the early 1700s, this was almost exclusively a home of the Dutch that had really founded Kinderhook. But by the time that Henry Knox brought his noble train of artillery through here, it was about 50-50, about 50% Dutch heritage and about 50% non-Dutch heritage. German, Scottish, they had been doing the clearances in Scotland, Irish, English. And what that meant is that how this endeavor was perceived was not as homogeneous as we come to initially learn. You know, we get a view of American history and we're the heroes in our story. Why not? What a great country. But it's not entirely accurate. Actually, you know, this was a very divided community about what was happening. Particularly among the Dutch Americans here, they wanted to resolve this peacefully. So, you know, this part of the story, it's important to know about what happened and how that changed things, and also what that can mean for us today. You know, the important highlights here is the fact that when the 7 Years' War, sometimes called the French and Indian War, concluded, the British were in serious debt for paying for that, and they looked for ways to balance their budget. They looked here because, of course, they provided security for us. Seemed reasonable to them to tax us for the success of that war, except for one major factor, and that is the way they went about doing that was contra to their own political philosophy, which is you have local representatives who decide how to do that taxation. This is why we all learn in school, no taxation without representation. That was us. We claimed to be really loyal and good Englishmen, and we wanted to be treated just the same as our cousins, distant cousins overseas. And we tried really hard to convince the king and the parliament of that. This is why in 1774, all the colonies sent representatives to Philadelphia for the first Continental Congress. But you should know that they immediately debated independence. We're talking 1774 now. And they rejected it. They rejected independence. They were reaching out to the leadership in England, and they demanded that they treat us like good Englishmen that we perceived ourselves to be. And those pleas went unheard. They tried for almost 2 years with that first Continental Congress. They adjourned and went home. Why they actually convened the second Continental Congress in 1775 is because of this great presentation you heard today, Lexington and Concord, that had been blood spilled. And we convened a second Continental Congress, and once again they considered independence. And they actually said, nah, let's go slow on this. They wanted to actually convince the Parliament and the King to change their mind and their direction. Here's a surprise. Not only after Lexington and Concord, But even after the Battle of Bunker Hill, the Battle of Bunker Hill, we fought arguably the greatest military force in the world at the time, and we basically won that battle. The British had over 1,000 casualties, and yet our Continental Congress in July voted instead to send a petition to the King and to the Parliament. This comes down to us in history as the Olive Branch Petition. But I think it shocks people to know that this was even after the Battle of Bunker Hill. We were trying to find a peaceful resolution to this conflict. And then they waited. And they waited. By the end of the summer, they got their response. Wasn't the response they were looking for. The Parliament voted that we were an open and armed rebellion, and they were sending armies here to suppress us and find the people who sent the petition, hunt them down, and hang them as traitors. And then you're wondering, think about all the things we've talked about here this morning. Now imagine we got Tim Ooms who spoke right before me, Bendette. We've got representatives here today. Imagine being representatives that sent that petition, righteous, I would argue, petition. They expected to be treated with respect. Instead, they were told, you're open traitors, we're coming for you. And then you wonder, what were they going to do? Well, they had a pretty human reaction, which was their grip with fear and indecision. Here's what ends up happening. Now we're talking late summer into the fall of 1775. Keep in mind, we view it today from 2025, we think we're fighting for our independence. There had been no such declaration. Our leaders were gripped with indecision. This changed because of the courageous activities on the battlefield. This is where this noble train of artillery made the difference. Because when they eventually got to Boston, arguably the greatest military power in the world left it. And it shored up the backbone of our representatives. And the respective colonies sent message to their representatives, vote for independence, vote for independence, vote for independence. And Henry Lee's resolution finally passed on the 2nd of July of 1776. They signed it on the 4th of July, 1776. But this is why this action here and why Kinderhook played a role. Because this noble train of artillery stopped in our community as divided as it was. They supported with logistics and getting food resupply, getting them prepared to keep going. And when the British left, we actually then went on to vote for independence, and we won. And afterwards, our Constitution has been mimicked the world over. You know, this was an era of the divine right of kings and queens and aristocracy when people like us were subjects. And we changed the history of the world for the better. For all of our warts and challenges that we have here in America, we changed the world for the better. We said we're citizens. And government started with the sovereignty of the citizen. This is something that we can be proud of, that we were part of the noble train of artillery, and also that we changed the arc of history. Final point. What about that division here in Kinderhook? I mean, people could argue we're pretty divided here today. Well, I want to end on a really positive note. You know, if you drive down this road right here, Route 9, and you're heading towards Hudson, you'll find the Tory House. You see that there? One of the prominent lawyers in this community was Peter von Schack. And Peter, he thought we should just let cooler heads prevail here. We should keep working with the Parliament. We'll get this resolved. He did not think it was a good idea for armed rebellion. In 1778, our community voted he was a traitor. He needed to leave. He left. He went to London. In 1785, Peter von Schack came back, and we accepted him here. We healed those divisions. He went on to have a very effective, successful practice for 3 more decades. He was proud to be from Kinderhook. So I can tell you, we can gain inspiration from this story. That there's nothing that we can't do if we put our mind to it, and we can certainly heal divisions. So let's be proud of our history here in Kinderhook.
If you want to know more, I've got a website, The Spirit of Philadelphia. I've got an essay on this particular talk I've given called Courage in the Declaration of Independence, where I talk about how that changed and firmed up the backbone of our representatives. And if you want to get a deeper dive, you can read my latest book, The Spirit of Philadelphia. We've got an independent bookstore right here in Kinderhook. Mindy Bricker sells it. All right, God bless you guys. Thanks for coming out. Thank you, Chris. I wish you could have gone another 20 minutes there. Because that's good. Next, I'd like to introduce Matt Morrell, the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. Has a few words to say. I don't think you're going to top Chris, though.
Good morning, and welcome to the first event of this 250th anniversary year here in Columbia County. I'm pleased to welcome you, and I'm very grateful for the organizers of this event under the leadership of Supervisor Tim Ooms, who made all of this possible. Thank you. Columbia County has a rich history. Columbia County played an intricate role in the birth of America, and it is only fitting that we celebrate this success, and we also reflect what work still needs to be done in our country. As the chairman of the Columbia County Board of Supervisors, I've been a strong supporter of the efforts of Columbia County, the Columbia County historian, and the different historical activities planned for this year. We are working with the partners throughout the county, including various towns, historical societies, and not-for-profits. There is a vibrant committee that is actively involved in everything associated with the important anniversary. I hope that you especially enjoy the Flag Day Parade, which will take place on June 13th in Hudson. As this event will become the culmination of the county's various efforts. Again, I would like to congratulate and thank Supervisor Tim Ooms, whose leadership has made today's event possible. He has demonstrated his commitment and ability to work with various municipalities and not-for-profits in order to provide a wonderful event here today. Thank you.
And this is totally off script, but Monday night, the town of Kinderhook, the town board, voted to have a float in the Flag Day Parade. Me being not creative or anything like that, Sally has offered, but if anybody wants to get on the float committee and has any great ideas, please stop over. We're looking for ideas here, that's all. And people want to get on the float. Yeah, people want to get on the float. So if anybody has any ideas of a float, let us know. And next is Mayor Dorian Weir.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. Today's reenactment would not have been possible without the dedication, skill, and passion of so many people. To our reenactors, your attention to detail and your commitment to authenticity made this event unforgettable. To our local officials and historical society, thank you to Tim, Matt, Bill Better, Amy Strunk. Thank you. Your resources and your dedication to preserving our history. To the families and friends who came out today, your presence reminds us that history is not just about the past. It's about the stories we share and the connections we build in the present. As we leave today, may we go with the knowledge that we are the stewards of this story. The Knox Train of artillery was not just to feed coal cans. Not just a feat of strength, it was a triumph of spirit. I believe that spirit is in all of us. Thank you for joining us and remembering and for keeping the flame of history burning bright. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Next, I'd like to introduce Scott Bendett, who's going to keep it short. They're afraid because I don't usually keep it short, but I will today. Thank you for having me here. But I just want to say one thing. So my wife is a Van Tassel, and me, I'm a fiddler on the roof. I'm a Jewish guy that whose family immigrated from Russia, and I talk to my wife often about her being a Mayflower person and daughter of the American Revolution, and all of the impacts that her family has had in our country. And for somebody like me, I'm just really grateful that Colonel Knox and all these participants who garnered our freedom for America and let people like my family come here and make an impact. And my family came here 100 years ago. 100 years ago. They didn't speak English, they were broke, they were discriminated against, and 100 years later, only a lifetime, their grandson is got a wallet full of money and a belly full of food and is a New York State Assemblyman. And I couldn't think of a greater country than the United States of America. And I'm really proud to represent Columbia County, which has just such a strong and rich history in that production. Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming here today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm glad the weather actually cooperated for January. Oh, we got to cut a cake? Oh, please come and take some cake. That's the word here.